If you want to know what I would keep if I could only have a dozen palettes, then stick around. Hi there, it's Hélène and welcome back, or if it's your first time here, welcome to HMM Makeup or Makeup. I have been playing with a lot of palettes lately, and I did see Jen Love do something similar recently on the channel, which is what inspired me to redo this video, because over time we change our minds and our preferences evolve. And I wanted to pull out of literally hundreds of palettes at this point. I wanted to pick out, if I could only keep a dozen, what would they be? And so I have a dozen palettes that I've pulled out of my collection. If I could only have 12, that's what I would keep. And I have one honorable mention as well as a standout product over the years. I'll keep that one for last. But I want to go through in no particular order. So I picked out 12 palettes, and they are just, as an ensemble, they are the dozen that I would want to keep. And so I basically did some horse trading and essentially keeping the best of the best in my eyeshadow palette collection and getting as much variety as I could without necessarily taking the palettes that had the most shadows per palette. I went for color story, I went for uniqueness, and in 12 palettes, how could I basically recreate my collection but on a much smaller scale? So I have 12 palettes. They are not, as I said, they are not in order of importance. It's the whole kit of 12 that I am super happy with. And I don't think that I would want to just swap one palette out for another. I feel like this is, and I'm looking this way because that's where the palettes are. It's just a sweet spot, and I'm really happy with what I came up with. So let's go through the 12 palettes that I think that that would be sufficient to offer the best of what I have in my collection. The first one I'm going to go with is a palette that gives me subculture vibes, but it is from Colored Raine, and it's a 9-pan palette. It's a gorgeous color story, and it looks like this. And I really enjoy the color scheme on this one. Now the kind of golden background is a little bit distracting, unfortunately. It does kind of mute the orangey and yellow colors, but I guarantee you that this is a very nice color story that I've been able to do so much with. And I'm wanting to point out some specific colors, but really all of it is so nice. I'm hoping that you can really see how well curated this color story is. Really, really nice. I'm very partial to it. You can do a sultry look. You can do a fresh, vibrant look. It's a gorgeous palette. And I did not want to identify preferred eyeshadows in this palette of 9 because, frankly, they feel like they all belong. So I didn't want to pick favorites. And since I mentioned subculture, why not just show you subculture right afterwards? So this is an absolute favorite palette in my collection. And you can see, I think, with these two, for example, that there is some redundance in looking at this palette and the Colored Raine palette. Colored Raine being called Safari Raine, by the way, is the one that I showed you just now. And so there is some overlap between the two, but I think you'll notice that there's a real lack of orange in this palette compared to what is available in the Safari Raine. So I do feel that they are different enough that I want both of these for different reasons, and I do find the formula is different between the two brands, and that the color story skews differently between the two, and these are all colors that I really like, so I don't feel like it's too much of the same because I know that I would use them. And since I just talked about an ABH palette, I do want to talk about this one. And this one continues to be a palette that is just, it's a go-to palette because it is so easy to do a look with this palette. It's extremely user-friendly. You can always come out with a great look. This is a beautiful palette for work-appropriate looks, and a palette where you can take a look that you created for work and amp it up for the evening. Sultry, if I can only bring a couple of palettes with me on a trip, Sultry would be one of them because it takes care of evening, and I would probably just take a very easygoing, more of a mattes kind of a palette and just supplement it with the Sultry that I would have been using for the evening. Sultry just makes it a no-brainer that there's going to be a 2 to 3 shadow look just like that, and you're going to look amazing no matter what. It's the most, I'm going to say the most user-friendly Sultry palette that I know of. That's it. I think that kind of sums it up. And now for a look that packs a punch, but that's very approachable at the same time. I felt like the Sigma Enchanted was worthwhile considering as one of the 12 palettes. And part of it is because of the real interest in these guys. So these are really interesting shadows. So they tend to have a shift, and they look really good, and it enables me to do a 2 to 3 shadow look very quickly and have some really interesting colors. So for example, this one, along with a couple of these, you see this deep brown green and a deep green, pardon me, and deep brown to go with this one. That's a no-brainer. You can also go like this and use that set of colors, and then you have some twin pairings, some very easy pairings that just jump out at you. The way the different colors were curated as far as their placement just draws your eye to some obvious combos. Like for example, this one is an obvious combo, this one is an obvious combo, this one's an obvious combo. So you can see it very clearly, and the fact that it goes from very light and deepens as you go, it just makes a lot of sense. And I am a very big sucker for this color. It's so nice. It's called Electrum. Very pretty color. There's I should not be swatching, but I'm going to swatch anyway. So here's a couple. Anyway, unfair advantage to Enchanted, but it has some edgier colors, but it's still very approachable, and it makes me happy. And it comes with a very decent brush inside as well. I'm happy. Now, we just talked about the Enchanted from Sigma, and I do want to talk about another rectangular palette, and it's the Colored Raine Queen of Hearts. I love this palette. It has been well used. It's quite dirty. I do love the color story. It's absolutely gorgeous. And for my green eyes, I love the purples and pinks that are in this palette. It's very easy to do a look. I have very little difficulty coming up with a combination that ends up looking great. It's all natural leaning colors, nothing too far-fetched, and it's just an easy palette to use. All of the shimmers are approachable. They do pack a punch, but they're not crazy colors, so they're very comfortable for most people, I think, to work with. And some of the colors, like Royal Highness, Noble Woman, and what's this one again? Your Majesty. They're very beautiful colors, and very often you only need 2 or 3 shadows in total from this palette to create a look. It's beautiful. And I've actually never thought of it before, but I should look at this palette and the Sultry and see kind of what crossovers I could create with that. I think I don't do that enough. I really need to pair up some palettes together and just take certain looks to another level. So I'm going to keep that in mind. Now for the last palette that is a larger rectangular palette is the Mothership 5. Out of all of the Pat McGrath palettes that I have, the Mothership 5 is still absolutely my favorite, and it's because of specifically 2 colors in this palette that I find just absolutely breathtaking. Now, I don't usually pay attention to the names, but I do want to tell you what they are. So this is the usual Pat McGrath lacquered, kind of black lacquered palette, and I'm always scared of messing it up. So these colors at the bottom here, this one, do you see the blue shift? And so this one has like a blue and gold shift, and then this one, hopefully you can see that it goes from green to kind of yellow to kind of a red. Do you see the multi shift that happens there? It's a beautiful color. And so if this palette were to shatter, heaven forbid, if I could only keep these 4 intact, I would still consider this palette as one of the 12. It's really these that make this palette so unique and so attractive to me. Yeah, it's the richness of the red. Just every color is just has dimension, has interest, and I'm a sucker for lime green, and to have a lime green that shifts in to 3 different colors is just phenomenal. See if I can get this one to also show a little bit. Doesn't show as well on camera as the red does, but when I have it on my eyes, I get asked. I get stopped and asked to know what that shifty green, lime green color is. And so it makes it an absolute go-to. So again, these 4 at the end here is what really makes this palette so unique and so memorable in my eyes. And the names, if you are curious, VR Fire Opal is the one that is the green. Astral Lunar Gold is, or pardon me, Astral Luna Gold is the one that is kind of a bluish to gold shift. And then Blitz Flame is the red. And then there's also Rose Gold above the red in Rose Gold 005. And that and the red make for a good pairing as well. It's a beautiful, beautiful palette, and if I could only keep one 10 pan from Pat McGrath, this Mothership 5 would be the one that I would keep. And speaking of Pat McGrath, I do want to show you this palette. This is the Bronze Seduction. I think Bronze Temptation is the name of this palette, and I do really love this palette as well. It has some gorgeous colors in it, a number of shifting colors. So these, I think that one, don't see the shift on that one, so I'm pretty sure it's just these 2. Yeah, and Supernova does not shift. So there's Supernova down here, and then there are these 2 that are just gorgeous. There is Corruption and Dark Paradise. Just see here. Corruption and Provocatrix. I'm pretty sure that that's it. Corruption and Provocatrix. The two favorites in the palette. I don't mind this one as well, and this one is beautiful too, but the ones that really shift and look very interesting are those two that I just showed you. And you can see, I think, the shift as I'm moving the palette. They keep me interested, they keep me engaged with this palette, and if I want a very easy look as well, these two at the end here. You know exactly what you're getting, a very basic look, but a very attractive look. And so this palette, if I need to have a palette to throw in a purse or in a travel bag for a couple days, this one I wouldn't have any issue with selecting. It's a very well curated palette for it being just 6 shades. And this palette is even more compact than the Bronze Temptation. Bronze Temptation, yes, just checking. And it's the Enchanted Secrets from LH. This is a quad that I have as a go-to anytime I want a very particular special effect. And this one is particular, ethereal. This one is of particular interest to me because I like the color Chartreuse, and it has a shift that really brings it out, and I think it's gorgeous. It has pink, peach, and pink, peach, green, lime green, and I don't know if the camera is really picking it up. It has these amazing shifts that really transform the eye, and I can see it on my finger, but for some reason with the ring light I don't feel like it's showing you what it can do, which is unfortunate. In real life it's pink, yellow, lime green, orange. There are a lot of different aspects to this shadow. Anyway, this is my favorite of the bunch, and this one's a close second. But all 4 of them are beautiful. It's just that these 2 at the top I tend to use more, and you can see that a lot more of the pattern is worn on the top too. Anyway, beautiful quad that I can often bring with me to accompany a palette that is maybe more of a basic offering. These really are transformative shades, and I mean, for me to choose a quad as one of the 12, you know that this is beautiful. It almost hurt to wipe that finger off. Now this one is super interesting. It is a palette from Makeup Geek, and Makeup Geek is no longer. It's called All That Glitters, and I'm pretty sure that I sent this one to Steph, this type of palette to Steph, and a big part of why, if you know me well, yellow and lime green I'm a sucker for, and purples. And that basically describes most of the palette. And there are a couple of more neutral tones here, but it's pretty much yellows and purples and some lovely couple of deeper colors up top there. And the color story is super to me. I would absolutely do a look that would include these 2. I would absolutely include a look with this as the base color. The gold and purple here, or aubergine I would more so say, that would make a gorgeous look. These would make a gorgeous look, actually, all 3 even. It's just a 9-pan palette, but there's just so much I can do with it. And as I look at it in real life, I'm right away, I see pairings and pairings and pairings. And so I feel like this would be a palette I could use for a whole week and not be bored. And that's hard to say for a 9-pan palette. It's really pretty impressive. I could just keep having very different looks all week with a palette like this. So it makes it very easy as a choice in a top 12. I think you're getting a sense that the theme here is that I have a wide variety of types of shadows. And this palette is no exception. It is one of my favorites in my whole collection, has been since I got it. And it's the Chloe Morello Volume 2. And a big part of my love affair with this palette is the fact that there is a chartreuse right here. It's a beautiful green, and that there are a lot of mattes. When I look at the number of mattes, 1, 2, 3, 4, a couple of satins, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8 for sure mattes in this palette. So it's a very decent number of mattes as anchors really for other shadows. And I'm being very conservative in what I'm calling a matte because there are a number of satin shadows in here that probably behave more as mattes than as shimmers. It's a very easy palette to go to because every time you do a look with the Chloe Morello 2, it just turns out well. It's a very flattering palette, I would say, for most people. And there's a good range of deeper, and so you see some quite deep shadows here. It's a decent mix of deeper shadows and lighter shadows to suit a lot of different people. And this next one is very similar to that. It's a little bit more blingy, but it reminiscent of the Chloe Morello 2, but it has more a lot more punch to the color. So a lot of different colors, but a very punchy finish on a number of them. So it's almost like this is Chloe Morello 2, but amped up with some metallics. And I do love this color story. I have used it a lot and continue to use it a lot. And it makes me think of the sultry. It makes me think of the Chloe Morello 2. And frankly, of other palettes that have metallics in them, because there are a couple of really standout shades like this one, where you know that you're going to have a real impact if you put it on the inner to 2/3 of the lid. I'm very, very partial to Violet Voss shadows, and this Like a Boss palette is my favorite of the Violet Voss that I do have. And I did purposefully leave this one for last, and it is a palette that I've talked in at least three videos over the last month or two on this channel, and it's Tiny Marvels. The palette that was a collaboration between Mel Thompson and Sydney Grace. It is a fantastic palette. Mel did such a great curation for this palette. If you really think about it, it's only 15 shades. It's not a huge amount. And it's the color story. It's so good. It's so good. If you want a berry look, you can have a berry look. If you want a neutrals look, you can have a neutrals look. If you want kind of naturally occurring colors, it's very easy to find. To do a kind of a forest green look, you can do it. And you can also go with a bunch of pastels. I've mentioned berries. You can also do a neutral look with this palette. This palette really can be edgy. It can be very reserved, and it can be really editorial, because there are some specific colors in here that speak to editorial. I mean, these guys, this one, this one, this one. There's a lot that can be done here, and there's a very nice anchor, deep brown anchor, to help with building some looks and giving dimension. And then the pastels in here were really well chosen. I'm pretty impressed with the way the palette was curated, and it's hard for me not to dig my fingers into this thing. It's a palette that's very easy for me to go to, and that sometimes I resist, because I think that I would just kind of use this palette a lot more than other things in my collection, and I do want to keep it for a long time. So I'm trying not to use it too much, and just rediscover the joy every time I choose to use it. Okay, just a recap for the 12 that I showed you. I'll just show them to you again really quickly, and I want to do an honorable mention afterwards. So we talked Tiny Marvels. We talked Violet Voss for Like a Boss. We talked about the Ciaté Morello 2. The Sigma Enchanted. The Colored Raine Queen of Hearts. The Volume 5 Bronze Temptation. Bronze Seduction. This 6-pan is the Temptation. This is the Bronze Seduction. The Bronze Temptation. All That Glitters Isn't Always Gold from Makeup Geek. Enchanted Secrets Quad from Linda Halbary or the LH brand. A couple from ABH being the Sultry and the Subculture. And finally, a somewhat of a subculture twin, the Colored Raine 9-pan called Safari Raine. So those are the 12 that if I could only keep 12 in my collection, that is what I would choose. And I did not include my singles palettes and that kind of a thing, just ready-made palettes that you can get in a retail store if they're not discontinued. And I do want to talk about these guys. And these palettes were palette offerings from a few years ago from Lancôme. Less than 4 years. I think it's 3 years ago now. And these palettes are 2 different palettes. It is the first and only time that Lancôme had 2 different offerings for their holiday kit. They had one called the Glow, and they had one called the Glam. The Glam was supposed to be a little bit more flashy than the Glow, and therefore the palette was to be a palette that was a little bit more on the sultry side, going out for an evening, wanting to feel pretty sexy, and so this is more leaning toward the sultry, in my opinion. This combination. To have the red and the brown as well, and it included a couple of blushes. And it really oozes sultry. So I mean, this one as well, just a beautiful look for an eyeshadow on the eye. Just it really speaks kind of date night, going out on the town type of a color story. And the other one was meant to be a little bit more wearable, daily, that kind of a thing. And so therefore, this is the color story for the Glow. And it is what I am wearing on my eyes today. And I really enjoy it. So this basically, this quad right here is what I'm wearing, and I really enjoy this palette a lot. Actually, I enjoy both of them. I'll just show you both of them side by side. So they did not make the 12 because they're really not palettes that were available for a whole lot of time, but they were so well planned and curated. I'm trying to get it to be more readily viewable. They were so well done that I will have these palettes for years in my collection. They are a no-brainer travel palette, either one or both. I have been known to bring both for a trip, just because it's a whole lot of shadows. Each one has 10 shadows and 2 blushes, and we know that blushes can be used as shadows as well. They're just so well curated that it's a no-brainer to just take these guys, 1 or 2, and just throw them in my makeup bag and away I go. I know that I have enough from 1, never mind 2, to do a lot with, and in a very compact fashion. So I was so happy with the curation of the palettes. That's why I picked up the Glow and the Glam. I could have normally just have picked one, and most of what was in the kit would have been the same for both. They had a couple of differences in the mascara that was included, blah, 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 but for the most part it was the same kit, and what was really all that different was the palette in question. Very high quality as well. Despite the fact that it's a holiday set, it was limited edition, they did not go cheap on these palettes. They are really, really good, and I hope you can see from the makeup look on my eyes that I really had no trouble creating a look. It was like 5 minutes and I was done. Really beautiful. So I encourage anyone who is looking at the holiday sets, who cares about eyeshadow, really take a look at the Lancôme offering, because it's pretty surprising what they're putting out. And as far as the quality of the eyeshadows, and meanwhile other holiday kits tend to go really cheap on the eyeshadows, it does not look like that is the case with Lancôme. And I do wish that they would create more of this style of palette. They're just, the way it's packaged, very sleek and compact. It's just such a good product, and I really wish that they would do it again. So that's it, 12 palettes and a couple of honorable mentions from Lancôme. I'm very happy with what I selected, and yes, I am leaving a number of gorgeous palettes behind in making this determination, but that's the whole point, is to make hard decisions and to give you a sense of what it is in my collection that I am really thrilled about and that I value a whole lot. And also, I say this knowing that in 6 months, if I'm asking myself the same question, I'm probably going to have some differences in my set of 12. I'm only human. I can change my mind. But yes, I think that's a very solid 12, solid dozen, and I guess a baker's dozen with the Lancôme palettes. Let me know what you think, and if you have your list of 12, I would love to hear what that list is. Please share your favorites in the comments. We can all consider things differently depending on what we see. With that, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it every single time. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. But for now, as always, take care.